Okay, then, what we need to do is finish up by talking about what happened to Pakistan that came into existence in 1947 by essentially the Muslims of the subcontinent saying that with the British leaving its imperial holding in 1947, that they didn't want to remain in a unified subcontinent that would have been dominated by Hindu India. All right, and so you had Pakistan come into existence in 1947. And as I mentioned, in 1947, and as this slide indicates, Pakistan is a country comprised of two pieces, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. All right, now, what occurs is rather interesting between this country called Pakistan comprised of two pieces. The only thing that they had in common that by which they broke free from India was religion. They're both Muslim dominated areas. But what you'll see is that religion is not sufficient enough of a glue to hold countries politically together. That applies not only to Muslims, it certainly applies to Christians and any other major religion. All right, it's an insufficient glue, and I'll give you an example here. Let's look at the points of difference between East and West Pakistan when they were united as one country from 1947 to 71. First off, there are two different culture regions. All right, the principal indicator of cultural difference is language. It is not the only one, but is the principal one. Well, first off, East Pakistan, the predominant language there are more than one language, but the predominant language is Bengali. West Pakistan speaks Urdu, amongst other languages you'll also find there. So therefore you have a cultural difference there, based on language, but indicative of other cultural differences. All right? Mind you, and they're separated by about 1,000 miles of hostile India. Secondly, as I've written here, they have radically different climates. West Pakistan is an arid desert environment. That's especially important, as I've written there, to populations which live off the land. The physical environment itself is increasingly immediate in people's lives, as opposed to most people in developed countries where the physical environment is important, of course, but it is not as immediate to your livelihood and survival as it is in underdeveloped countries. Now, understand what that means when you have two different climates. That means you have different foods, you have different housing types, the overall relationship to nature is different. That's going to historically manifest itself in different ways, despite an overarching religion that only came in 1,000 years ago. So there's the different climates is indicative of a large array of cultural differences. All right. There's an unbalanced distribution of revenue. In other words, yes, they're one country, but what was soon realized is that West Pakistan got the majority of the national budget spent on it, even though East Pakistan produced the greatest amount of revenue. You can sort of see that here when you look at this graph that shows you the distribution of senior state positions in Pakistan when they were united. All right, and you can look how dominant West Pakistan is in terms of the civil authorities, the secretaries, joint secretaries, deputy secretaries, all these type of things. Overwhelmingly went to West Pakistanis in blue. East Pakistanis look a little anemic there, does it not? They're just not getting the same amount of representation. Look in terms of military employment, military power is increasing, is of much more significance in underdeveloped countries than it is in developed countries because the military represents a significant um, source of employment for common people. In addition, in underdeveloped countries, overwhelmingly, the military is used for domestic control, not something that people from developed countries sort of generally understand. All right, the military is often a critical force in terms of determining who holds power if it isn't the military itself. Right, completely different from developed countries in any case. And you can see how West Pakistan overwhelmingly is dominant in terms of military personnel when compared to East Pakistan in red there. And fourthly, unbalanced political control. As you can see there, West Pakistan was the center of governmental power. Despite, by and large, however imperfect, there was roughly an equivalence in terms of population between both parts of the country. I believe East Pakistan had more, but relatively speaking, the populations were both rather sizely. But the political control overwhelmingly remained in control of West Pakistan, and so therefore they afforded themselves the benefits that I already talked about in terms of unbalanced distribution of revenue. All right. And so, therefore, what you got finally in 1971 was East Pakistan saying, we've had enough. We want out of this thing called Pakistan. We want to become a country, an independent country. And thus, you know where Bangladesh comes from. Broke free from Pakistan in 1971. All right. This was an ugly affair. And you might ask yourself, well, what do you mean ugly? Is there a lot of violence here? Yes, there was a lot of violence here. It is estimated that somewhere in between 3 to 4 million people, I believe, are estimated to have died in this conflict. And you have to ask yourself, how did a lot of people die in this conflict? When West Pakistan is way over here, East Pakistan, now Bangladesh in 1971, is over here, and India is certainly not going to allow troops to move back and forth, and neither country has a substantial naval capacity to project power. How come you got 3 to 4 million deaths? And let's think about the size of that there. What did the United States lose in the European theater in World War II? Is just a mere fraction of that. In any case, the reason is, think about what's happening on the ground. When Bangladesh broke free, you're going to get a lot of Bengali religious nationalism, where these Muslims over here are going to be saying, look, we have been getting screwed. First, we were screwed by India when we were part of this Hindu-dominated area under British control. Right, we broke free as Muslims, and then we were screwed by fellow Muslims over here in West Pakistan. And so we're going to finally form our own Bengali nationalist state to have an expression of Bengali Islam that reflects the values we see. Should have been implemented if things had been done in an equitable fashion. What I mean is you're going to get a lot of religious triumphalism, a lot of Bengali nationalism, and so what's going to happen is remaining Hindus that were in Bangladesh are going to feel extremely uncomfortable when you get all this drum banging going on. And so if you're a Hindu over here, you might want to get back, go into India over here. Not to mention, on this side, near the border in India, you're going to get plenty of Muslims who are going to say, hey, it might be better at this time to go into Bangladesh. And if I had time, I'd flesh that out further. These things get rather petty. Remember, most people are living in small agricultural villages. Can you imagine the sentiment in a small village where let's say Muslim in this case, and it could be a Hindu in another case, but some Muslim is going to say, hey, you know that Hindu over there is richer than us, he's got a bigger house. Hey, he must have got that house through various nefarious practices associated with our persecution. Historically, let's get it from him. That type of stuff, and not to mention that he may have a good-looking daughter, and you understand what's going to happen. All right? There's going to be a lot of appropriation of the moment by opportunists in the countryside, and it's going to lead to mammoth expression of horror. You can sort of see that here, the massacre of Hindus by ultra-Muslims outside of Dhaka, all right, December 1971. So it is sort of an irony that the amount of death that occurred with the formation of Bangladesh in 1971 was largely projected against Hindus, not against West Pakistanis, all right? In any case. So we have this new independent country called Bangladesh in 1971. So in other words, this Pakistani state comprised of two pieces that was established in 1947 didn't last but what, 24 years, showing you that Islam, much like Christianity, is not a sufficient a glue to hold disparate populations together. Christianity isn't either in the West. You've had World War I, World War II, and numerous other conflicts. All right, you can break that down on a smaller scale in the United States right now, where there's it seems like this desire to persecute, certainly exclude Christians coming from the rest of the Americas, certainly from Mexico into the country. The religion is not historically a very effective glue. In any case, now, so we have this new country called